Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. I want to share with you some of the events that happened this week on the social scene. What does it mean? Another young child is able to get a hold of an automatic weapon and kill, apparently at random, his fellow students, and then kill himself. And do all of this, they say, in a matter of about 16 seconds. We will never know the why because the shooter's dead. However, this kind of thing has been happening a lot lately. Didn't happen in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Didn't happen 15 years ago. But all of it is taking on what the Bible indicates are the signs of the times. 2 Timothy chapter 3, Paul writes, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come." Kids running around with automatic weapons in school, that's called perilous. Why? He says, because men, human beings, shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, meaning lovers of wealth, boasters, proud, blasphemers. They will be impious, caring not about God, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, think wicked, without natural affection, hard-hearted even toward their own flesh and blood, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, meaning lacking self-control, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, full of self-conceit is what the word means, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. What do you do with people like that? God tells us, from such, turn away. This is where we live. Where are we going? A high school football game in Pleasantville, New Jersey, down along the coast, just north of Atlantic City, not New York, not out in the used to be country, was interrupted this past Friday night, just 2 days ago, with gunfire, leaving at least 3 people wounded, including a young boy. We're told apparently someone was able to bring a weapon to the game. Somewhere in the third quarter, they just simply started shooting. And the media has no information as to who or why. One more cultural event to become weaponized. Watch for ID checks and searches at all football games, and for that matter, at large gatherings in the future. And when this happens, we will start to complain about the inconvenience and the implications of all of this in our so-called open society. Who do we blame for this? We blame the demise of the nuclear family and our religious heritage. You do realize that the demise of these two major institutions is deliberate. The government did this to us, well, in some degree, but not completely. The enemy of our soul is doing this to us. He is hard at work. And the Bible predicted this sort of thing 2,000 years ago. It was predicted in the areas of the Bible we call the end of the age. The Apostle Paul, writing in his first letter to the Thessalonians in chapter 5, this would have been the 1st century A.D., he said, "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For you yourselves know perfectly, exactly, that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then shall sudden destruction come upon them. It'll come as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness." Meaning that we are not confused. We're not perplexed by these events. We know full well what they mean. They mean that the enemy of our soul is gathering steam, becoming more effective, able to accomplish a great deal more today than at any time in human history. The technology helps. But what has helped this more than anything is the destruction of the nuclear family, which began in the 1960s and has continued to where now we have mothers killing their children. I don't talk about abortion. I'm talking about 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old little children they just don't want anymore. I told you last week about the mother who's trying to gather money to bury her poor child who was killed, until they found out she's the one that killed the child. Stuff like this didn't happen 100 years ago. Not in civilized societies. Now it's happening everywhere. Nobody is safe. The New York Times is reporting that 1.4 million Americans now identify as something we've come to know as transgender. Not happy with the way God made them, believing with all their heart that nature made a mistake. All of this is double that of a widely used previous estimate, an estimate by the Williams Institute in 2006. They estimated about 0.3 of a million. ABC News reported 0.4 in April 2011, which is a far cry from the 0.03%. I wondered if it was a typo, because the popular estimate is 4.5% or 7.4 million Americans. The Williams Institute is now apparently reporting 0.06%, although I couldn't find it anywhere online. The Times is what's saying all of this, and it's very confusing. With the 2017 Gallup survey reporting 4.5%, this whole thing makes me believe the illustrative reporters of news may be a little rusty in terms of their math. Perhaps since all this sexual stuff is basically immoral, telling the truth, being accurate, just may be a little bit too much to ask. But the point here is that the Gay and Lesbian Alliance is now reporting that 10.2% of the regular characters on primetime TV, that's 90 regular actors, are homosexual. The 10.2 is up from 8.8 just last year. But they want 20%. So the question becomes, do you let your children watch television when you're not in the room? Do you turn your children loose to watch whatever they want, keeping them busy so you can get things done? You might just want to rethink that paradigm. The father of a second grader in Tennessee is demanding a policy change within the school district because his child came home with a school-issued flyer promoting birth control, including condoms. Second grade. 7 years old. Why? Well, the why is not the question. The how becomes the question. Mary Hughes Elementary School sent students home with a two-sided flyer advertising a free health clinic in Gray, Tennessee, a clinic offering medical, dental, and vision exams. Only the backside of the flyer was dedicated to free birth control and pre-pregnancy services. Among the services were free birth control, including implants, IUDs, pills, condoms, and more. Now, the school is in something called Piney Flats. That's a small town in East Tennessee. And inquiring minds wanted to know, why did the school feel it was appropriate to give this flyer to a 7-year-old? Well, the director of Sullivan County Schools said the birth control information was placed on the back page of the flyer by mistake. Now, the word mistake is a euphemism. It's a mistake by the school, which didn't catch it. My guess is nobody looked at the flyer. Nobody looked around at it, the back side. They were too busy. They got these things free. It was wonderful. They handed them out. Is that incompetence? Laziness? It certainly wasn't a mistake by the free abortion clinic that supplied them. And oh, by the way, these are the folks educating our children. In the same vein, judicialwatch.org is reminding us that, quote, the massacre of 9 Americans by a Mexican drug cartel this week creates yet another excellent opportunity for the U.S. government to finally designate the sophisticated criminal operations as foreign terrorist organizations. Judicial Watch has long advocated for this, and earlier this year published a white paper providing comprehensive documentation that Mexican drug cartels undoubtedly meet the U.S. government's requirements to be designated a foreign terrorist organization. Now, to meet the criteria requires that the organizations, be foreign, like in another country, that they engage in terrorism or terrorist activity, and or possess the capability and intent to do so, while posing a threat to U.S. nationals and or U.S. national security. Now, the obvious reality here is Mexican drug cartels are inherently foreign to us. They don't live here. And they routinely commit criminal acts within the statutory definition of terrorism and arguably represent a more immediate and ongoing threat to us in the United States, to our national security, than any of the currently designated FTOs in the State Department's list. On Monday, one of these illicit Mexican enterprises ambushed and murdered 6 children, including 8-month-old twins, and 3 women on a highway in the Mexican border state of Sonora. Other children, including an infant, a toddler, survived, with some of them seriously wounded. Why did they do this? Well, nobody really knows, and if they do, they're not talking. These were Mormon families who had lived in Mexico for decades. They're American citizens. They're gringos. Did they antagonize? Did they threaten one of these enterprises? Or is it that they were simply easy targets to retaliate against, or to make a point with the new U.S. immigration policy? A policy, by the way, that's not really new. It's called new, but it's an old policy that just happens to be that this president and his administration is willing to enforce. I'm thinking it's going to take a great deal of restraint for this president not to order reprisals. It would for me. The Republican-controlled Wisconsin Assembly passed a resolution Tuesday this past week labeling the evergreen in the Capitol Rotunda a Christmas tree. Not in the Capitol in Washington, D.C., but the Capitol in Wisconsin. They did this 4 days after the Democrat governor said he was renaming that tree a holiday tree and would decorate it with science-themed ornaments. The resolution passed 64-30. 60 Republicans, all the Republicans voted for it, and 4 Democrats. All the no votes came from the Democrats. It now moves to the Wisconsin Senate, which must pass it in order for it to have power. If it's passed, it will not require the signature of the governor, according to the newspaper, Journal-Sentinel. The National Abortion Federation just named an Episcopal priest as its new head. An Episcopal priest, considered Christian. In a press release from the National Abortion Federation last week, it was announced that the very Reverend Catherine Hancock Ragsdale has been named the pro-abortion organization's new president and CEO. According to the press release, Ragsdale, who is openly gay and is married to a fellow Episcopal priest named Mally Lloyd, we talked about these guys about a year or so ago, has been outspoken about abortion rights, LGBTQ equality, and public policy issues affecting women and families throughout her career. It might come as a surprise, but if you are pastoring a church, if you are part of what we euphemistically call the clergy, it's not a career. It's a calling by God. But I digress. The National Director of Priests for Life and President of the National Pro-Life Religious Council wrote, quote, "For decades, Catherine Ragsdale, a false prophet, has been trying to put religious vestments on child killing. She led the Religious Coalition for Abortion Rights, now the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice." See how it works? Which actually provides rites of blessing for parents about to kill their children and for the facilities in which the blood is shed. He added that the group also provides, quote, "scripture studies that attempt to say exactly the opposite of what Scripture says about what God thinks of the shedding of innocent blood." Ragsdale's appointment, Pavone said, actually reveals one of the greatest weaknesses in the abortion industry. You see, it violates science, logic, and history. But it does make them feel better. So what does all this mean? Well, at its core, all this secularism and justification is simply a last-ditch effort to get rid of God, at least in the minds of the next generations. Makes me think the biblical passages that highlight the surprise God's judgment provides to mankind later on. When a generation exists that has no corporate knowledge of these basic biblical imperatives. Now keep in mind, it is a Roman Catholic priest who is decrying the effort to provide rites of blessing for parents about to kill their children. The same priest who routinely provides rites of blessing for congregants who seek eternal salvation. It's called the Mass, a Catholic construct, not found anywhere in the Bible, which offers people the ability to work their way to heaven, or at least to have a chance, since the Catholic Church, in fact no church, can guarantee such a blessing. Only the possibility of a shorter stay in purgatory. Purgatory, a manufactured place where people can pay for their sins over time, and then maybe be allowed into heaven. When we think of all of this nonsense with birth control and the like, the whole idea of the pot and the kettle comes to mind. The new Disney Plus entertainment streaming platform launched on Tuesday came with trigger warnings. You know what trigger warnings are, right? They're warnings about older movies, about outdated cultural depictions. Well, the trigger warnings came on movies like Pinocchio and Dumbo, Fantasia, Lady and the Tramp, The Aristocrats, Jungle Book, all of which have previously faced criticisms for racist imagery, stereotypes, and much more. You see, the warnings state, quote, "This program is presented as originally created. It may contain outdated cultural depictions." For example, Dumbo, an animated film about a flying elephant, has been targeted in previous years for its depiction of a character named Jim Crow, which was voiced by a white actor. Many people and the outlets likened the performance to wearing blackface. There was also an entire scene full of crows that acted in a stereotypical and negative depiction of black culture. That entire scene has been stricken from the film altogether. Over with the Jungle Book. The Jungle Book has taken some hits over the years for its portrayal of a monkey called King Louie, which critics have said presented a negative image of blacks. The character, voiced by jazz legend Louis Prima, is also lazy and demanding and adheres to stereotypes that were in America during the 50s and 60s. This according to something called Buzz.ie. Lady and the Tramp also features the song "We Are Siamese, If You Please," which is performed by two cats that sing with an exaggerated stereotypical Asian accent. The movie The Aristocats has also faced criticism for its portrayal of cats drinking and carousing, as well as a Siamese cat playing the piano with chopsticks singing "Fortune Cookie, Always Wrong." Fantasia, according to some people, creates gendered expectations for men and women. Now, the logical question becomes, where did these culturally embedded stereotypes come from? They certainly did not come from European white males. They were meant to embrace the differences, not condemn them, to highlight them and embrace them, not exploit them. But now that's a little bit too much for 21st century Caucasians who are wallowing in their own shame for being, well, white. I think we need to grow up a little and embrace our differences, not exploit them. If you look at the black community in the 60s and in the 70s, they were doing that. They were embracing their culture. What happened? Now, I'm not talking about all those who are now getting their 20 minutes of fame by being outraged at everything. I'm talking about everyday people. What happened to us? Why can't we embrace the differences? Enjoy them. They've got a lot to offer. And the differences don't have to be good or bad. They just have to be different. I'm not like you. It doesn't make me better. It doesn't make me worse. Get a grip. We need to grow up.